What's up, everybody? Welcome to Around the NHL episode 11. I'm Alex, and we are here today to talk about the best player on every NHL team leading up to the 2017-2018 season. So we're going to go through each team, all 31 teams, and talk about the best player on each team. Now, this is a little different than like most important. So sometimes, the best player is going to be the most important. Sometimes it could be different, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go along. But we're going to talk about just the pure best player on each team starting in alphabetical order. So let me know what you guys think the best player of every team is in the comments below, and here we go. So the Anaheim Ducks. Best player on the Anaheim Ducks, I believe, is Ryan Getzlaf. Now, and I also believe him to be the most important. Anaheim goes how Ryan Getzlaf goes. If Ryan Getzlaf starts out slow, then the Anaheim Ducks are going to start off slow. If he turns it on early, then they're going to turn on early. He is a dominant player, one of the best centers in the league. I mean, he's big, he's skilled, he still has some speed, even though, he is getting a little bit older. He's got a lot of talent, and he definitely, I think, is the best player. I think the only argument maybe you could make even is to go a little, maybe more risky in the eyes of some people, is Hampus Lindholm. Could be another player you could argue for. The best player on the Boston Bruins, I believe, is Patrice Bergeron. Now, David Pastrnak could make an argument here. You can make an argument for him. But I think Bergeron is just the best overall player. Pastrnak, I do think, is the best offensive threat that team has by a long shot, and Bergeron doesn't match it. But Bergeron just plays the game, obviously, so well. He's one of the best players in the entire game, two ways. I mean, he can score, he can do everything. He can play on the power play, play on the penalty kill, win draws. I mean, he's a very important player. He's played through a lot in his career, obviously, that we, in the playoffs that we've heard of in the past couple of years, what he had to play through, even when Boston made it really far. So I think without a doubt, he's the most skilled player and the best overall player on that team. The Buffalo Sabres, I think this is another pretty darn easy one, is Jack Eichel. I don't think there's any question in my mind. Jack Eichel is one of the best players in the National Hockey League, even after only playing in the league for 2 years and playing, 20 games last year. He didn't even play because of an injury and was probably slowed by that injury for another 20 games. He's still easily one of the best players in the league and will probably in the future be in the top three. No problem, next to probably Connor McDavid. He's a special player. He's an extremely fast hockey player. He's an extremely skilled hockey player, and he's only getting better overall. I think without a doubt he's the best player on the Buffalo Sabres roster. The Calgary Flames. Now, the Calgary Flames have a couple players that I think are, maybe similar in the category of you could consider them all to be the best player, but I think it really comes to Johnny Gaudreau as the best player on that team. I think he is without a doubt the most skilled, but overall I do think he's the best. I mean, he's essential for them to make the playoffs this year. He's going to have a good year. I mean, he is just a special player to watch. Where you could maybe argue Monahan is a better overall player, I just think Gaudreau brings so much to the table offensively that it just overpowers even Monahan's two-way effort. Not saying Monahan isn't important, but I mean, equally as important. But I do think Gaudreau is just a better player overall. The Carolina Hurricanes. Now, I'm going to go, this is a little maybe not right choice from Carolina, but I'm going to say Jeff Skinner from Carolina. I do think that he is, without a doubt, at least right now, the best player on the team. I mean, he is a pure goal scorer. He's extremely skilled. I think this spot, at least for Carolina, is up for grabs because I do believe that other players will eventually surpass him. They have a great defensive core. Jacob Slavin is an extremely good defenseman. So is Noah Hannafin, and forward-wise even, they have a lot of skilled forwards coming up. Elias Lindholm, Victor Rask, Sebastian Aho. I mean, they have a lot of really skilled forwards. But I think as of right now, I think you could easily say Jeff Skinner or even Justin Falk, but I'll go Jeff Skinner is probably the best player on the Carolina Hurricanes roster. So for Chicago Blackhawks, I'm going to go Patrick Kane. And I say that from a skill perspective, yes, but I also say it from, again, another, I think when you talk about the best or the most important player, and you talk about like a team that would maybe go as that player goes, I think a player like Patrick Kane, the team really moves as he moves. If he starts out strong, they start out strong. He's a very, very skilled player overall. I think Taves is a better overall player. You can maybe even say the same thing for Marian Hossa, even though he's not playing this year. But I do believe that Kane overall is the best player. The Colorado Avalanche, I don't even think there's a competition with Colorado. I think it's easily Nathan MacKinnon wins the spot as the best player on Colorado. There are some talented players in Colorado, believe it or not. I know they've had their struggles, but there are some individual, really nice players on Colorado. Matt Duchene, obviously, he's still there at the time of this recording, at least. He's an insanely skilled hockey player. Gabriel Landeskog is a pretty good overall player. Tyson Barrie is a very good defenseman, I think highly underrated in terms of, people. I don't think people give him enough credit that they should, but in terms of just player skill-wise, I think McKinnon's level of play is just better than Duchene's. And if I had to pick, to have a player on my team and I had to pick McKinnon or Duchene, I would pick McKinnon. And there's a reason why he went, obviously, where he went in the draft. And there's a reason why he's as skilled as he is. He, I think, is easily the best player on Colorado. I think that is why, no matter how bad another rebuild gets from them, I do think they'll always try to keep Nathan MacKinnon because he's really the piece you need to have. For the Columbus Blue Jackets, I'm going to say Seth Jones is their best player overall. And that really is overall. I think there are some dynamic offensive players in Columbus. I think that Alex Wenberg is extremely good. I like Panarin. And I like a lot of their young players. Cam Atkinson is extremely good. And Sergei Bobrovsky could even make a name for himself on this list, could potentially make it. But in terms of best overall player, who's the best player? Seth Jones just does so much and is just so good for only being 22 years old. And he's already proven it since he's been in the league. And he really stepped it up for Columbus last year. He's led them to better places, I think, than they've ever been, and I think he'll continue leading them to places that they've ever been. I think they'll become even better this year. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think a lot of that does come from Seth Jones. The Dallas Stars, I'm going to go Jamie Benn. I think Jamie Benn is a better overall player and just the best player on the team over Tyler Seguin, who I think some people undervalue him. Sagan's extremely, extremely good, but I just think Benn overall, goals, assists, his poise, how big he is, and just how well he can skate with also being physical when he needs to. Just an overall game, Jamie Benn is a special, special player. That I do think, obviously, him and Seguin go hand in hand. But if I had to pick one over the other, I think I'd want Benn over Seguin. For Detroit, I'm going to go with Henrik Zetterberg. I think just overall, even at the age he's at, he's still the best player on that team. He still can make it so that the team isn't the worst team humanly possible. I think this team is going to be very, very bad this year, just as it was bad last year. I think he is a guy, though, who can still put up 60-plus points, still be a great two-way player. You'll never have to not rely on him. You can always count him in for almost every game. You can always count on him to play a great game you don't ever have to worry about this guy. And even at the age he is at, he can still do it. And that's incredible. They do have other talented pieces, but they really have nobody that even comes close to Henrik Zetterberg, even at the age he's at. The Edmonton Oilers, boy, I wonder who I'm going to pick for this one. Connor McDavid, best player in the game. I personally think better than Sidney Crosby. Leon Draisaitl is extremely, extremely good. Also probably better than most players in this league. But obviously Connor McDavid is the best player on that team. Best player probably in the entire league. The Florida Panthers, I'm going to go Alexander Barkov. And now this, that could be a little controversial, right? Jonathan Huberdeau is a very good player. Barkov is a very good player. You can even argue Aaron Ekblad. Now, Aaron Ekblad took a huge, huge step back last year. And that doesn't mean I think he's bad. I think he's actually a very, very good defenseman. I think any team in the league would want a player like that on their roster. But I think just overall, Barkov has really just the overall package, right? He's skilled, but he's also big. He's very, very talented. He honestly could be the most important player on Florida as well, other than maybe Ekblad or even their goalie situation. But I think overall Barkov is easily the best player on that team. So the LA Kings, I think the best player on the LA Kings is Drew Doughty. Now, I was thinking, could it be Doughty or is it Kopitar? And then I was thinking, you know what? It's honestly not even that close. I think Kopitar could be the most important player on LA. Kopitar took a major step back last year, was nowhere near as good as he's been in the past, and LA struggled. And so the team does tend to struggle with Kopitar, but I think without a doubt, Drew Doughty is one of the best defensemen in the entire league. You know, he's not like an Erik Karlsson or a Brent Burns or anything, but in terms of overall defenseman, I mean, he's about as good as it gets. And in terms of, best overall player, I think he is the best overall player. I think Kopitar probably was last year, like going into last year, but he took a major step back, and, age and how many games he's played and just his style of play, I think could get to him. I don't think he's the best player on that team. I don't know maybe if he ever was, if you've always been like a Doughty fan, but I definitely say Drew Doughty is the best player on this team. The Minnesota Wild. I think the best player on the Minnesota Wild is Devan Dubnyk. Now, it could be Ryan Suter. I think at some point maybe you could have argued Zach Parise, but I think right now it comes down to Suter or Devan Dubnyk. And I think as we've seen over the past several years, Devan Dubnyk is extremely talented. I think he's maybe I think he could be the best goalie in the league. Certainly at times he's proven he can be. But overall, I think he is what makes that team go as well. I think if he's on his game, if he's making saves to really help them win games, they're going to win games. And I think just overall, Suter could be the most important player. Suter is their best defenseman, obviously plays the most minutes, is basically always on the ice, even as he gets up there in age. But, from where they are, Devan Dubnyk is their most important player in terms of being a goalie. And in terms of being just a great overall player, he's easily the best on that team. The Montreal Canadiens, another goalie, I think without a doubt. I mean, this one is almost as easy as Connor McDavid. Carey Price is the best player on that team. Now, Carey Price is probably the best goalie in the league. Devan Dubnyk is up there. Braden Holtby is up there. Carey Price is probably the best. And, even if that wasn't the case, Montreal is very, very weak. Shea Weber is not that great of a defenseman. Forward-wise, Drouin is something special, but he's still young and a little bit unproven. Alex Galchenyuk is very good, and Max Pacioretty is about as solid of an offensive threat as you'll ever get. But in terms of just pure talent and just being a good player, Carey Price is obviously their best player. I mean, he is supremely talented at being a goalie. When he goes, the team goes. He's arguably the most important player on any team because it just seems like if he plays like a god, the team makes the playoffs. If he plays anything less than a god, the team doesn't. And I think that speaks more to how the team is just overall bad and he's really good than actually him being talented. I think it maybe takes away from that a little bit because you're thinking of other things. But I think without a doubt, Carey Price is the best player. There's not anyone on that roster that even comes close. So the Nashville Predators, I'm going to go with Philip Forsberg as the best player. Now, you could really argue this one. I mean, there are a lot of players on Nashville that you can make an argument for. Ryan Johansson, I've really loved. I've always liked him, actually, even in Columbus when he even had his struggles. He's a very good hockey player. You could argue for a couple other defensemen, Roman Josi, or even PK Subban. I don't think you could argue for Pekka Rinne, but Forsberg is just such a dynamic talent in terms of a player. It's incredible that Washington traded him away, and obviously I think they're going to regret that in the future for the next 10 plus years. I think they have regretted the last couple of years. I mean, Forsberg is very fun to watch. He's a very good overall player. I think a lot of those players on that team is very good, a two-way kind of player, and Forsberg is no different. But what he brings to the table, I don't know if he's the most important player. In fact, I would even say he's not. But I think best pure talent player, I think that's him. So the New Jersey Devils, I'm going to go for the best player being Taylor Hall. Now, this is a little bit of a tough one because I honestly even want to give it to Corey Schneider. He had a somewhat off year last year, but even in an off year, he's very, very good. I mean, his career save percentage is insane. He is a legit starting goalie. He's a legit elite goalie. Better than big names such as Jonathan Quick. I think at times better than Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, he's a very talented player, Corey Schneider. But I think overall, the things that Taylor Hall brings, when he played in Edmonton, he was a very talented hockey player. He scored a lot of points for Edmonton. He was always injured. He had his struggles, and it would have been fun to see, him playing with a McDavid. But overall, on a team that is getting better in terms of talent, in terms of forward and defensive talent, I think he is easily the best player. And then when you can compare him to a goalie, it gets a little bit more difficult, but I do think he's a better player than Corey Schneider. The New York Islanders, this one's pretty easy. It's John Tavares. I think without a doubt. They have some good defensemen. Their goalies are nothing special. They have some talented forwards, but I think, honestly, the team goes as John Tavares goes. I think he's easily their most important player. But in terms of talent, the points he puts up every year, how much he works on his game, how much he's not even that fast of a player, but he works on his speed, and he tries to improve. And he is just a special offensive player that they need to keep around. I think without a doubt, Tavares is the best player on that team. The New York Rangers, I'm going to say the best player is Henrik Lundqvist. It's not hard really to say that because their forwards, while talented, aren't supremely talented, right? They're more of a solid threat, a solid amount of skill and grit and two-way work, with players like Zibanejad or really anybody else in their forward rankings. And defensively, Ryan McDonough is very, very good, but I wouldn't call him an elite defenseman, is he as good as Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, Drew Doughty, even Oliver Ekman-Larsson? I don't even think so. Henrik Lundqvist is still one of the best goalies in the league, and he can single-handedly win them games. And I think that is important, especially for a team like that. He is their most important player, I believe, but he is also their best. The Ottawa Senators, when playing, Erik Karlsson. Now, he's injured for the first month, but I'm going to still count him, obviously, too. I mean, in my opinion, he's the best defenseman in the league. He's better than Brent Burns, I personally think. He's very, very fun to watch. It's like adding a 70-point scorer forward to your team, and that's very fun to watch. I mean, he is a blast to watch on TV, live, anywhere. I mean, he's very, very good. The NHL has not really seen anybody like Erik Karlsson on defense in many years. I mean, he's comparable to some of the greatest defensemen to ever play the game in terms of points. So, I think he's almost even a Hall of Famer right now. If he were to keep this up, he'd be probably top 5 best defensemen to ever play the game, and that is very special. So I think without a doubt, he is Ottawa's best player. The Philadelphia Flyers, I think the best player here is Claude Giroux. Still. He had some struggles last year. I think people have even maybe kind of forgotten about him in a way, but I think without a doubt he's the best player. Their defense and goalies are nothing special, so you basically have to compare him to Voracek, and I think he is part of what makes Voracek go. I think they're both very, very good. Voracek is an extremely good hockey player, but I think Claude Giroux is very talented, can score a lot of goals and points in general. There was a time when you probably could say he was the best player in hockey a couple years ago, when they beat Pittsburgh and it was said about him. I think you can make that argument. He was playing the best hockey of his career back then, and I do think you could say that. For Arizona, I believe the best player to be Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Now, I talked about that when I said best defenseman. I think Ekman-Larsson is one of the best defensemen in the league. He constantly puts up points. He constantly puts up goals. He puts up 20-goal seasons like they're nothing. On a team that's just flat out bad, he puts up a lot of points. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that he puts up that many points on just an awful team. Almost, year in and year out. There was, years where they were playoff threats, where they were always going to make the playoffs. But really, they've been nothing special. But he's always been extremely special. And I think without a doubt, he's the best player on their rebuilding roster that will get better. For Pittsburgh, I think the best player is Sidney Crosby. That one's obviously easy. But he is probably the second best player in the league. Malkin is very good, but I don't even think it comes close. This one you don't really have to talk about much. Sidney Crosby is one of the best players to ever play the game. He's easily the best player. St. Louis Blues, Vladimir Tarasenko. I think without a doubt, Tarasenko is the best player. I really like Pietrangelo, and I like a lot of their players just in general, but Tarasenko is a very, very good goal scorer, one of the better goal scorers in the league. Maybe not the 2015, 2016, 2017 version of Alex Ovechkin when he came into the league, but pretty darn close overall. Probably not as high, but extremely, extremely good, a prolific goal scorer that anybody would want on their team. I think without a doubt that puts him ahead of just any other player on their entire roster. The best player on the San Jose Sharks, I think, is Brent Burns. Now, it's Brent Burns because just of the overall package and what he can do at his position. Marc-Edouard Vlasic, I think, is probably the most underrated defenseman in the NHL. He is so good, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves. In terms of forwards, Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski are both very, very good. But Brent Burns, for being a defenseman, for getting up there in age, actually, being in his early 30s now, for being such a big guy. I mean, he's a massive guy. He is so talented in terms of that he can put up just an insane amount of points. And again, B and Erik Karlsson get them 60, 70, 75 points a year. I mean, that's something special when you have that from a defenseman. You don't see that often. The Tampa Bay Lightning, I think Tampa is another team filled with talent, filled with very good players. And I think when it comes down to it, I do believe Nikita Kucherov is the best player on that team. Even with Stamkos back this year, I still think Kucherov is the best player. I think over the past 2-3 years, he's proven himself to be one of the best scorers and one of the best point getters this league has seen. He is very, very talented. Now, Stamkos could be a better offensive talent, but Kucherov, I think, still can get better from even where he's at. He's very, very good. Victor Hedman's another good option, you could even say. Victor Hedman's one of the best defensemen in the league as well, but kind of has just recently reached that level where he's extremely, extremely elite in the defenseman. I'd say over the past 1 to 2 years he got there. So I think Nikita Kucherov, even with Stamkos back, is the best player. The Toronto Maple Leafs best player is Austin Matthews. This isn't that hard either. Austin Matthews, only playing in the league a very short time, has already made a name for himself, has already scored a lot of goals, has already shown people that he's the real deal and can play at this level and be an elite player in this level, and within a very short amount of time has become Toronto Maple Leafs' best player and a player that will get them to the playoffs year in and year out and probably win some pretty important games for them as time goes on. The Vancouver Canucks, I'm going to do a special thing for them, and I'm going to say the Sedin twins. I think both of them are their best players. I think both of them are pretty much bring an elite level of talent to that team. I mean, even at their older age, I think they're turning 37 I think they just turned 37. They may not be as fast, and they may have lost a step in their older age, but they are still so much fun to watch them play. And to watch the fact that they just know where each other are, you don't see that often. In fact, you never see that. They are very fun and very interesting to watch, and I don't think one is better than the other. I think, while one is better at assisting, the other is better at scoring goals. And I think just overall, both of their two-way plays are very, very dominant. I wouldn't put one over the other. The Washington Capitals, I'm going to give the best overall player, the best player on that team, to be Braden Holtby. Now, I really like Ovechkin. I'm not an Ovechkin hater. I really like him. I think he's a dominant player, and I think he's one of the best goal scorers the league has ever seen, maybe the best goal scorer the league has ever seen. But in terms of just overall play, I think Braden Holtby is maybe the best goalie in the league. I think, with Carey Price slipping last year, I think Braden Holtby became the best goalie in the league, in my personal opinion, if not Carey Price. And, obviously that takes a lot of skill. And Ovechkin has lost a bit of not his skill, but he's lost a bit of his step. He's no longer as fast as he was, and so in that way, he's not as dominant as he was either. So I do believe that Braden Holtby is a better player, and probably more important to them this year than Alex Ovechkin is. The Winnipeg Jets' best player is Patrik Laine. Now, I was very much thinking about giving this to Mark Scheifele because I really, really like Scheifele, and he's an amazing player, and he gets a lot of points. But if there's anything that we can tell about Laine is he could be the next Alex Ovechkin, really even 2.0. I mean, I talked about Tarasenko earlier being basically an Ovechkin, but maybe a slightly step down of Ovechkin. I think Patrik Laine is the real deal. You can see it even this year in the preseason. His shot is unreal. I mean, he has the same spot as Ovechkin in the power play. He can rip that puck. He's a special scoring player. And he's going to score a lot of goals in his career. And I think, just going into this year, I think he is their best overall player. I think Scheifele is more important because he's a center and Laine isn't, but I do think Laine is a better player. And the Las Vegas Golden Knights, so, this is obviously going to change in the future with their draft picks. They're going to become better players, but I'd say right now their best player is Marc-Andre Fleury. And that's nothing against the other players. I think their defense has some okay pieces, and I think their forwards have some okay pieces, but I don't even think it's close. Fleury has become the face of the franchise ever really since halfway through last year when we kind of knew that he was going to get picked by Las Vegas. And I think, it's easy to see that he's the face of their franchise, and I do think he's their best player. He's a very, very good goalie. He's not elite. I never thought he was elite. I do think he's very good, and honestly, there's no really other player that can even touch him on that team in terms of talent. So I believe he's the best player on that team. So that is what I think of every team's best player. Let me know in the comments below what you think the best player on every team is. And that's it for my Around the NHL, preview prediction for the season. Make sure you check out our division. We predicted the divisions in all different videos, so we talked about that. Make sure you go check that out. And the season is here. Season starts on Wednesday. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Great stories to watch this year. A lot of interesting stuff on a lot of interesting teams this year. So, we'll be having videos throughout the year with big things happen, or maybe we'll do like monthly recaps. We're not done with talking about NHL in general, but it's going to be a very, very fun season. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.